4 a.m. putting on my shoes. Gotta get outside, gotta leave this room. There's just too many things that remind.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class today. Before we get started in our material that I want to cover for today, I want to briefly just cover a little bit of business. So your Module 1 assignments, they were due this past Sunday. I've graded most of them at this time. I still have to grade your user survey that you developed, but your discussion boards and your Module 1 quizzes have all been graded, so if you want to check those out and see how you did on those, you can check them out in your grade book in the online course. So this week we're talking about customer service skills. And this is one of the most important things that we could actually kind of have as a computer support agent. Oftentimes, we get into a job in technology or a job with computers with the idea that we can just kind of hang back in a back room, work on stuff, and just kind of be left alone. That's kind of an ideal situation, and we all kind of want that, or maybe kind of have that ideated in our heads as something that would be a possibility if we got into these kinds of roles. However, to the contrary, it's actually quite different. Most of the computer support roles that you will encounter have some to a whole lot of human interaction, interacting with customers, interacting with clients, interacting with your coworkers. So knowing how to better serve these customers, knowing how to do the things that you need to do in order to come to an understanding and resolve a user's issue, it requires these customer service skills. And these customer service skills, they're going to extend out past any kind of computer support job as well. If you graduate and you decide, hey, this might not be for me, any field that you go into, you're really going to need to have these customer service soft skills in order to really excel in your job. So we're going to start out by looking at a customer service ethic here. So what is a customer service ethic? So a customer service ethic is an organization-wide commitment. This is from the bottom to the top, from the CEO of the company all the way down to like the janitorial staff and everybody that works in every position across the country, or across the company rather. Everybody needs to have in the organization this customer service ethic. It must be something that is shared by everyone. Because in order for this to really work, everybody has to buy into it. Everybody has to believe in the value of good customer service. And there really is a ton of value there, because when you look at it, your clients, and more importantly, your repeated clients, the clients that keep coming back, these are the individuals who end up keeping that company afloat. So these relationships that you build with the clients and this level of client satisfaction that you strive to achieve and then maintain are some of the most important aspects of a business, because at the end of the day, they're really what keeps your business afloat. So we have this idea of a customer service ethic, being customer-minded, being customer-focused, human-centered, if you will. When we think about tech support, we don't often think about the human element of it. In fact, a lot of what is the word that I'm looking for? A lot of the stereotypes, if you will, of a tech support agent is someone who's kind of brash, someone who's kind of standoffish, maybe awkward, doesn't know how to interact with people or customers. And what we want to do is we want to tear down that stereotype, because it's those things that really hurt our business and hurt these client relationships and lower the level of client satisfaction. So the biggest thing that we're working with here with our customer service ethic, or CSE, is commitment. commitment to this customer service ethic. And what are we committing to when we commit to a customer service ethic? Well, that's what we have on this slide here. We're going to, 1, provide users with the information, service, or solution that they need. Bare minimum, right there. Providing users with the information, service, or solution that they need. If a problem cannot be resolved, we're committing to explain to the client what can be done. Because look, right, problems come in. Problems come in every day. Some problems are easy. Some problems can be fixed. Some problems are outside of the scope of what we're able to do for a user. So if we fix the things that can be fixed, and at least explain to the client what can be done if things cannot be fixed, what we're doing there is building a relationship. We're being honest. You're going to hear me say several words, multiple times throughout the next several weeks. Things like honesty and empathy and, building this client relationship. Because at the end of the day, it's really the client, the customer, that is at the core of the issue. We're thinking about more than just the computer that we're trying to fix. We're looking at things on a bigger scale in order to serve the client. So another thing that we want to do for our customer service ethic, in order to commit to this customer service ethic, is treat clients with respect and courtesy. You want to treat people the way that you want to be treated. You want to be treated well. And this is going to be really tough a lot of the times. Just keep that in mind. This is going to be really tough. Because one of the things we mentioned last week, one of the things that we'll mention several times, is when people aren't able to use their computers for whatever reason that they need to use their computers, it's frustrating. Any situation like that is frustrating, right? So you have to have that level of empathy. You have to put yourself in their shoes. When you think about anything and you think about the lack of control that you have in that situation, you get frustrated. You might get angry. You might even yell. But it's because you're in this situation where you have a need and you're out of control in order to be able to meet that need. However, we, hopefully, as the computer support technician, are able to help get things back on track. So you want to try to use a gentle hand and be kind and be courteous and be respectful as you approach your clients and customers. Communicating to clients when they should expect to receive service or information that they need. And that's, again, based on this frustration. And we're talking about, again, being honest here. If I tell a client, okay, break it down. Here's the problem. We can fix this. We can have it done by Friday. Great, right? Excellent. Because then at least they know, as the person on the other end, that the problem that they're currently out of control over, their technology issue, is going to be fixed. And it's going to be fixed by a certain point in time. So what they're out of control of, that might seem like a huge issue, is now not a forever issue anymore. There is a date that you've communicated to them by which their problem should be solved. Now, we want to make sure we stick to any date that we tell them, or communicate with them about further issues. Because if I say, oh yeah, we'll have it done by Friday, and Friday comes and goes, you probably know what that feels like. That's awful. We don't want to treat our customers like that. That's not courteous. That's not respectful of their time. And that just puts them in even a bigger mess, right? So we want to do everything when we promise to do it. If we're going to make these promises, and we want to make some promises, then we want to do everything by the time that we promised to do it. At the very least, communicate further issues and be open and honest and truthful and empathetic overall of our customers' needs. Because this is our goal. Our goal is 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. Boom. Big goal. This is our customer service goal. Super important. Now, is this goal possible? Absolutely not. This goal is completely impossible. It's totally impossible to get 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. Because who are clients, right? Clients are human. You can't make someone satisfied if they don't want to be satisfied, for lack of a better term. You know, somebody's just going to have a bad experience. You can't control another person's experience. You can do the best that you can. You can be open and honest and empathetic and get the problem solved and do everything that you need to do. But sometimes you just can't satisfy that customer. So 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time seems like a pipe dream. It seems far-fetched. But it's still our goal. 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. So if it's not possible, why is this our goal? Well, just because something's not possible doesn't mean that you stop working toward it. Even though this goal is not possible, we're still striving to meet this goal. And you might feel like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill, right? Especially, when during times when things are just not particularly going well. But we're looking at constant improvement. We're looking at consistently getting better. We're looking at keeping a mindset all of the time that we're going to solve the problem, that we're going to make the customer happy, that we're going to have this goal of 100% client satisfaction 100% of the time. So regardless of whether or not it's doable in reality, this is still the finish line that we're running toward. Now, what does it mean for someone to be satisfied? What is satisfaction versus dissatisfaction? Or what does it mean for someone to be satisfied versus dissatisfied? And how does that have an impact on our business? Well, we know what it means to be satisfied. You're happy, you're content, you've got your problem solved, you're good to go. Satisfied customers are more likely to be repeat customers. That's key. Repeat customers are the lifeblood of your business. They're the ones that keep coming back, keep spending their money, keep supporting your organization. And tech support, being just like any other business, needs that to survive. But dissatisfied customers cause you a lot of trouble. Customers who are unhappy, customers who don't get their problems solved, customers who don't really like the situation. One, dissatisfied customer incidents take longer to handle. If the customer is dissatisfied, this is ultimately going to lead to that problem taking longer to fix. And what does that do? That takes man hours and puts them on this problem instead of putting them other places where they could be needed. So that's ultimately going to cost you some money in your tech support business, because you're not being able to put the resources where they need to be at one particular time. Dissatisfied customers also generate you a lot of headache as a tech support agent. You know, in addition to these lengthy incidents, there are repeated callbacks or help desk contacts. Because it's, hey, you got my problem fixed yet? Hey, you still working on my problem? Hey, what's going on here? I haven't heard from you. How's my problem coming? Complaints and ill will. Incidents that you have to push up the chain to higher levels of support. And then product returns and refund requests. All of these things impact your business. They cost you money. They take people away from jobs that they might otherwise need to be doing. They get bad word of mouth out there with complaints and ill will. And while typically it doesn't end up with, you know, a massive amount of people stopping to use your service, if I'm complaining about a service and my friends hear that or my family hears that, they might think, that doesn't sound like a service that I need to utilize. So even if it's just one or two, that's one or two people who you've not gotten as a client, who cannot be in that pool of repeat customers that really make your business money. So trying to leave customers satisfied is a huge deal. Now, in utilizing our communication skills to try to listen to our customer, we utilize what we call the LAST method. You have a video in your module that discusses the LAST method and how to use it. But LAST is an acronym. It stands for listen, apologize, solve, and thank. So as we're engaging with a client, as we're engaging with someone who has come to us for tech support, these are the things that we want to think about as we are approaching their problem. Listen, apologize, solve, and thank. Now, listening has a purpose, and there are all sorts of purposes for listening. And one of your big assignments for this module involves these different purposes for listening. And as we listen to someone else tell us their problems, or tell us a story, or tell us something that's going on, we're using these different types of listening, and we're using them maybe one or two at a time, or we could be using them for several of these purposes for listening. Could be using several of these purposes for listening at a single time. And really, we should be, as tech support agents, using several of these purposes for listening at a given time. Discriminative. Learning about the user. So when we listen discriminatively, we're learning about the user, and we're learning about those sort of user classification things that you did in your survey in Module 1. So we're not directly surveying these people, like we're not sending this survey out, but we're listening for cues, and we're listening for elements that allow us to pick up on certain things about our user and classify them through those means. Comprehensive. When we listen comprehensively, we're understanding the user's message. What are they trying to tell us? Oftentimes, we have to kind of play the role of a translator when we're listening to a client, right? Because in that sort of scenario, we're the experts. We know about computers. We're doing the thing. But they might not be an expert. They might not be that super user. They might not be able to communicate to you in terms that you'd like to hear that make things easy on you. So in that sort of way, you have to become a translator, and you have to be able to try to translate what they're telling you in a way that makes sense to you so you can better solve their problem. Because they might come to you and just say something like, I clicked the thing and it doesn't work. What does that mean? So based on listening comprehensively, we can in turn start to listen critically and analyze and evaluate the user's message. Listening therapeutically allows us to identify opportunities for positive support. Like if you're listening to a client and they seem like they're having an exceptionally bad day, if you can pick up on that and say, hey, it's going to be all right. We're going to get this fixed. Everything's going to be fine. Just give them a little bit of positive support, a little bit of reassurance. That's something that's incredibly helpful, and that's something we do over listening therapeutically. Listening appreciatively is probably the one that we're not really doing as we are approaching user support. I mean, you could be listening appreciatively. You could find enjoyment in listening to other people's issues and, then trying to figure out a way to solve them. But most often this is for like listening to music and that sort of thing. So it doesn't 100% fit in with what we're doing. But finally, listening relationally involves developing a rapport. Building that positive relationship between you and the client. So really, most of the time, as you're approaching a user support issue, you'll need to listen discriminatively. You'll need to listen comprehensively. You'll need to listen critically. You'll need to listen therapeutically. And you'll need to listen relationally. All at the same time. Did you know you were that much of a multitasker? Because you're doing all of this at once in order to understand the user, understand what they're saying, translate what they're saying into something that makes more sense to you, give them support if they seem like they need it. Just say, hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to fix this. Everything's going to be fine. And build that relationship between you and the user that's going to allow them to be a repeat customer because they're satisfied. They're satisfied. And this takes some mental gymnastics. This takes some really hard thought. Right? You got to really be actively listening in order to pull this off. When we're listening carefully. We're listening to the problem description, to the language used to describe the problem. And that language is going to be a clue based on the user's experience level to help you classify that user so you can serve them better. Because if I come in and I say, yeah, my processor seems to be a little warm. I think the fan might have become unseated. Versus, oh, I clicked the thingy and it doesn't go. So that's going to singe up some bells, singe up some red flags, singe up some alarms that identify you of who that user is, what their experience level is. And if it's a lesser experienced user, you might have to spend more time with education in helping them fix the problem. Giving them a little bit of training so that they can kind of help things out. But we're also looking at how the user describes the problem. Their tone of voice. Tone of voice has a lot to do with listening therapeutically. If I come in and I'm like, oh, man, my computer doesn't work. I'm really, gosh. Or if I come in, I'm like, yeah, I'm having this problem. It just seems to not be doing this. Or if, this is just, my computer, 3 different tones of voice, 3 different emotional levels, 3 different tech support scenarios that you have to be prepared for. So one of our big strategies in this is looking for a class in communication skills to build your listening abilities. Take public speaking if you haven't yet. I encourage you. What is that? It's like something like COM 231, something like that here. Because then not only are you learning how to better communicate yourself, but you're also learning how to better listen to other people in the class as they communicate to you. These are 2 huge, strong skills that you need as a good tech support agent. But there are some barriers to this effective listening. There are some barriers that will prevent you from listening the way that you should be listening. And one is focusing on your concerns. And this is a problem that a lot of us have. Right? When we start listening to something, when we start listening to anything, we think we have an understanding of a problem, and our biases start to creep in even before the other person has finished telling us what's going on. And like you hear the first couple of sentences and you think, oh yeah, that's the RAM or something like that. And then you're so focused on the RAM and how we need to fix the RAM that you don't listen to the next 4 minutes of description of the problem that the user's giving you, when you realize that it might, if you would have, you realize it might not be the RAM. Then there's allocating insufficient time, right? When you're listening to a client, you want them to be able to feel like they have the time to say what they need to say. If they're rushed, if things don't happen quickly, if there's a problem, then you might not get the full effect of what they're trying to communicate to you. So when you're listening to a client, 1, you need to make sure you have the time to actually do what needs to be done. Take other stuff, push it to the side. And 2, you have to treat them as if they're the most important thing at that moment. So you're going to give them the time to talk. You're just going to listen. You're not going to talk. You're not going to butt in. You're going to give them the ability to say what they need to say. And on top of that, a lot of times we think we need to say things to fill silences because silences are kind of awkward, right? But we don't. A silence, a pause could mean that user is trying to think about some things that they might have experienced and how to communicate them. So if you take that silence and you interject some things of your own in there, you could be interrupting their train of thought, breaking their concentration, and losing important details. We also want to make eye contact. We want to be engaged. We want to be in the moment. We want to make the user feel like they're the most important thing at that given time. You can listen to somebody and be looking somewhere else. We know that. Right? But if that user, if that client can see you face to face and you're looking off somewhere else, you're going to seem disinterested. You're going to seem like you don't care. And because of that, they're not going to spend as much time as they need to because they're like, well, why would I pour all this stuff out to you when you don't really care about my problem? When you don't really care about what's going on? So we want to be interested. We want to be engaged. We want to make the user feel like they're the most important thing at that given time, so that they can communicate to us their needs, their problems, and get everything off their chest so that we can more efficiently solve the problem. It's good. So here are some tips for effective listening, and you probably got all of these out of that rant that I just went on. One is to avoid distractions. Even if you need to pull your user to the side, take them to the back. You know, if you're in a particularly busy setting, you know, if you need to pull them to the side to listen to them, take them somewhere else to listen to them, do it. Get rid of those distractions. Give the user plenty of time. Once the user's done, they've gotten everything out, and you know that they're done, and they say that's, or, you know, whether they say it via verbal cues, like, oh, that's it, that's my problem. Take what they just told you and summarize it back to them. One, that lets them know that you listen to them and that you care. And two, it gives the ability to correct any misconceptions in the way that you've seen the situation. Another thing is to probe for details. Give them the ability to get things out, and in that summary, you might want to ask some questions. Things like, oh, well, you said this, so X, Y, or Z. What does that mean? How do you influence that? Are you doing something? Do you seem to be doing the same thing every time this happens? So on and so forth. And then using that attentive body language to make them seem the most important, you know, squaring up your shoulders, giving them eye contact, that sort of stuff. And overall, what we're doing is we're listening actively. We're engaged. We're involved. Show empathy by acknowledging feelings. Ask for clarification and detail while withholding judgment. That can be especially hard sometimes. Because you can be listening to a problem and you can say, oh man, I can tell this user just messed something up. They clicked the wrong setting. They did this or that. And when you go and you talk about the problem with them, because of this feeling, you might end up with this accusatory sort of manner. Like, you wouldn't go so far as saying, well, why did you break it? But it kind of comes off that way. So we want to get clarification and we want to get detail, but we don't want the user to feel judged. Because everybody's not an expert. We're not all sharing that same high level of expertise. So we're going to withhold judgment. We're going to provide non-evaluative feedback. Don't want to tell them whether they've done a good or bad job as a user. Don't want to tell them how poorly they behaved in a certain situation in order to get a problem going. I just want to provide feedback in such a way that just lets them know that they've been hurt. The A in the last method is apologize. And what this does is it starts to build empathy. And so the definition of empathy is we can have an understanding of an identification with a client's situation, thoughts, and feelings. Now, I say apologize. Did you cause the problem? 99% of the time, the answer to that is no. You're not apologizing for a problem. You're apologizing for the situation that the user is in. So you might think, well, why should I apologize? I didn't do anything. And we're not apologizing for something that you did here. I mean, I'm sure you've heard before people say, well, I'm sorry that happened to you. Or I'm sorry you're having this problem. Something just as simple as that. I'm sorry you're having this issue. Helps to let that user know that you care. Helps to build empathy. Helps to build trust. Right? Because if I have something that's important as my computer, and I'm going to put it in your hands to fix it, one of the things that I'm going to want to know is whether or not I trust you enough to actually do the job. And if you can show me that you care, and if you can try to build this empathy, another thing that can happen here is you can build trust with me. You can make me believe in you. You can let me hand over my computer to you for you to work on it without any fear or trepidation. That's important. It gives us this idea of this human-centered support. Like, we're not fixing a computer just in a vacuum, right? That's very rare, that we're just fixing a computer that nobody has ownership of. You know, if you were in certain situations where, like a school, for example, and you have to go around and update computer labs and things of that nature, then yeah, okay. But in most scenarios, somebody has ownership of that computer, whether they use it in an office setting for work or it's a personally owned computer. Somebody has an ownership stake in that computer. So the problems of that computer aren't just in a vacuum. The problems of that computer are causing issues with a person. Their inability to work. Their inability to call loved ones on Skype. Their inability to blow off steam by playing games. So these computer issues are parts of bigger human issues that we're also supporting in these manners. So because of that, we have to be cognizant of the human element that's involved when we're doing this support. Then we can solve the problem. That's our S in our last method. Once we've built our understanding, we can resolve the problem effectively. This means several things. As we're building understanding, we're building an understanding of both the user and the problem. So we're simultaneously developing an idea of who this person is, how we classified this user, and what the problem is with the device. And understanding here also helps to further develop empathy. You know, we can say something like, oh, it sounds like you've had a really frustrating morning, but I think I can help you with this. But I think I can help you with this. That's crucial, right? That's the light at the end of the tunnel. Because if I come to you and I'm frustrated, my computer doesn't work, and I can't do what I need to do in a given day because my computer's broken, and you just say something to me as simple as, oh man, it sounds like you've had a really frustrating morning, but I think I can help you with this. Then that lets me know that you care and that there's an other side. There's a point soon where my problem will be fixed. So we're going to communicate to a client that you view him or her as a person rather than just a computer problem. The human element. Because no problems exist in a vacuum. So we're going to visualize things. We're going to think about things in a larger context. We're going to use inclusive language. This is something that I do a lot, and I just catch myself doing it. I'm not going to solve this problem, or you're not having this problem. We're having a problem, and we're going to solve it. Shares ownership, avoids blame. Because if I say, "Oh, you have this problem," that seems accusatory, right? But if I say, "Well, we have an issue here, but we're going to fix it," makes it seem bigger, makes it seem larger, makes it seem like you're actively involved in taking an ownership stake role in this issue. critical. And then we understand the problem. We want to try to express the problem in our own words and fully comprehend the problem before working on the solution. And that's something that we have a problem with a lot of the times, and I know that. It's just kind of human nature that we want to jump to trying to fix something before we really understand what's going on. But I'm telling you that it's critical that we understand the problem to our fullest understanding before we jump into it. You know, the more time that we take up front to kind of visualize the problem and see what's going on, the less time we actually spend on the back end worrying with it and working with it, and the quicker that it is for us to get the device back to the user, which is what helps make them satisfied. 100% satisfaction, 100% of the time. That's our goal. Remember that. One thing that a lot of organizations do is they use scripts to kind of help them. So, you know, you'll see that in a lot of call centers, some help desk organizations utilize scripts. You know, and what we're really trying to do there is maintain a uniformity in service. Right? So if you call Ronnie at the help desk, or you call Cheryl at the help desk, or you call Rachel or Sam or whoever you call, they're all going to have a similar response because they're utilizing these scripts. And a script is a prepared sequence of questions and statements that covers several important parts of an incident. So you are working to try to get to the heart of the matter. And a lot of times these also include like decision points and a decision tree where, you know, like, oh, if they say yes to this, then you go this way and you start asking these questions. Or if they say no, then you go this way. And you've probably experienced a lot of these. Like when you call help support and they start with, did you try turning it off and turning back on again? You know, they're oftentimes reading from a script. And that's the first question on the script. But unless your company makes you read the script verbatim, you don't have to read a script word for word. You can paraphrase it. You can put it in your own words as long as the, you know, same question kind of comes out. Then you're more or less still on script. So we don't want to read lengthy scripts that makes our user just kind of feel like they're just a statistic and we just do this with everybody. You know, if we can restate things in our own words, that's going to help our user feel more important, and it's going to give us some more credence to, you know, in building trust. You know, even if we're kind of going with a script as an outline, it doesn't sound like we're reading off a script and we don't care. And so I'll leave with this here for this live stream because we've almost hit the 45-minute mark. But using tone and style. Using tone and style. How you communicate is often more important than the content of your communication. You can say the right things, but if you communicate them poorly, if you're saying them with the wrong tone, if you're giving the wrong message, it's not going to work. I've got these two examples here. Example 1. The help desk agent provided me with adequate information, but I felt through the whole conversation that I was intruding on his time. Example number 2. The help desk agent couldn't tell me what I needed to know, but explained why the information wasn't available yet. Now, think in your head for a second, which one of these users do you think came out more satisfied? And I can tell you more often than not, it's going to be the user from example 2. Because in example 1, the user got their information. They learned what they needed to learn about their problem in order to solve it. But they felt like a statistic. They felt like a number. They felt like an afterthought. They felt like the help desk agent had more important things to do. So even though they got their information, that empathy wasn't there. That trust wasn't there. But in number 2, they ended up not getting the information that they needed. But the agent took the time to talk to them, to explain things to them, let them know why the information wasn't available yet. And that at least gives you an understanding of the bigger picture as a client. Because they could have just said, I'm sorry, we can't solve that problem. Or we don't have that information. But taking the time to fully explain it lets the user put things into context, lets the user understand why they can't solve the problem. And it might even give them a timetable for when their problem could be solved. Right? Like if they say, oh, well, that information's not available yet, but it will be available on this day. It just hasn't been released yet. Okay, cool. So I can come back at this day and get this information. Sounds good. So using tone and style is just as important as anything else when you're communicating and listening to a user. So we've hit the 45-minute mark here. I don't like these to go much over 45 minutes on the high end. So this is where we're going to stop today. Don't forget to have a look over and be working on your Module 2 assignments. These are going to be due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So please get these done. If you have any questions, please let me know. Send me an email. Send me a Teams message, whatever you need to do to get in touch with me. I'm going to hang out in the chat for just a couple minutes just to see if anybody who joined me today has any questions. But that's all that I have for you today. Thank you for watching.